Welcome in, everyone. You know the drill. It's a deep dive time. You bring the intrigue, we bring the insights. And today, well, you've sent in a pretty fascinating book review, Stone Maidens, by Lloyd Devereux Richards. And let me tell you, this review, it's comprehensive, like
Yeah,
seriously in-depth, which is perfect for us because, we want to really get into the nitty-gritty of this thriller, what's working, what's maybe not so much, and really why it's grabbed so much attention, especially, well, kind of out of the blue.
Mm.
So by the end of this, you should have a pretty solid grasp of the book, whether it's something you want to add to that ever-growing to-be-read pile, or maybe just a better understanding of what all the buzz is about.
Yeah, exactly. Think of this as us sifting through all the details, all the analysis, and pulling out the nuggets of gold, the core takeaways. You don't have to. Plus a little extra context, to spice things up a bit.
100%.
Yeah.
So before we get too deep into the dark woods, so to speak, I think it's worth touching on the author himself, Lloyd Devereux Richards. I mean, his background, it's pretty unique. Law and environmental work, it's not your typical combo. But clearly, there was this pull towards crime fiction all along. And the review really harps on this. His meticulous nature, understanding the ins and outs of forensic science, law enforcement, even the psychology, the human element. It's like right off the bat, this isn't going to be your run-of-the-mill thriller.
It is fascinating, isn't it? That blend of his professional life, dealing with, facts and evidence, and then this creative outlet exploring the darker side of human nature makes you think how much of his own experience bleeds into the story. Gives it that extra layer of authenticity, especially when we're talking about something as potentially disturbing as, well, as this book seems to be.
Okay, so let's set the stage, shall we? Stone Maidens. It's billed as this dark, atmospheric, psychological thriller. And the setting itself, the Indiana woods, it's almost like a character in its own right. Immediately, there's this sense of unease, like below the surface of this tranquil landscape, something's lurking. And of course, the central plot, brutal murders of young women. But the way the killer leaves them, that's what's really striking. Posed, marked, almost like stone statues, it says.
Yeah.
Chilling stuff. Really leaves an image in your mind.
It's incredibly evocative, that description, almost like the killer's turning these victims into art. Twisted, macabre art. And immediately you're thinking, okay, this isn't just about violence. There's a ritual here, a purpose beyond the act itself, adds a whole other layer of creepiness for sure.
Absolutely. And the person brought in to decipher all this, to put the pieces together, it's FBI forensic anthropologist Christine Prusik. Now, her expertise, it's crucial because the initial question, it's not just who's doing this, but why? Why this specific horrific presentation? It's like, what kind of mind could even conceive of that?
It's smart choosing a forensic anthropologist for the lead. I mean, it's pretty common in this genre, right? Gives the author that avenue to really dive into the science, the details, which, from the sounds of it, Richards does. But then you layer on this unsettling aspect of how the victims are left. It's like, okay, there's a deeper meaning here, a message the killer's trying to send. Gives you chills just thinking about it.
Yeah, no kidding. So as Christine digs into this case, the story, it really starts to get intricate. It's not just about following the physical evidence. There are these connections to ancient rituals, scientific experimentation even, all somehow wrapped up in what the review calls the killer's, well, twisted mind. And on top of that, Christine, she's not just this, emotionless, purely logical investigator. She's got her own demons, baggage from her past, adds a whole other layer of depth, I think, both to her character and to the story overall.
It's that blend, isn't it? You've got the puzzle, the clues, the forensic stuff, which appeals to that logical side of our brains. But then tie in the mythology, the psychology, and suddenly it's hitting on those primal fears, the things we can't fully explain. And then with Christine having her own struggles, it's like there's this emotional anchor for the reader in all this darkness.
So themes and symbolism, they're clearly running deep here. Let's start with that obsession, the ritualistic aspect. I mean, it's clear the killer's not just randomly posing these victims. There's a deliberateness to it, almost like a macabre performance. For those of you out there fascinated by let's say the darker corners of the human mind, this kind of delves into how violence can become ritualized, driven by these deep-seated and frankly disturbing psychological needs.
That's that need for control, isn't it? Or maybe even this warped sense of meaning the killer finds in these acts. It goes so far beyond just taking a life, really makes you question what drives a person to this point, what makes them tick, gets under your skin, that kind of stuff.
And then you have the young victims themselves. They almost represent this loss of innocence, the fragility of it all, and this terror that grips the community. It really underscores that, this feeling that even in these seemingly safe, peaceful places, something truly horrific can happen. And it's a fear I think a lot of us can relate to on some level.
Especially when it's set in a place like this, right?
Yeah.
Small town, seemingly idyllic.
Yeah.
We have this inherent expectation of safety in those environments. So when that's shattered, when something this brutal intrudes, it's that much more impactful, both on the characters and the reader. Shakes you to your core.
And of course, with Christine as our protagonist, the role of science, forensics, is front and center. It's like her expertise is this light in the darkness, trying to make sense of the senseless. But even then, the review points out, there's this inherent limitation, like pure reason. Can it truly grasp something as irrational as this killer's actions? It's constant tension, isn't it?
Yeah.
Between the logic and the depravity.
It's a question that's always there, isn't it? In these kinds of stories. Can science truly explain pure evil? You can analyze the evidence, maybe figure out the how, the who, but the why. That often gets lost in the mess of human psychology, the dark stuff we don't like to admit exists.
Then you have Christine's personal journey. She's not just battling this external evil, this case. She's got her own internal demons to contend with. And the review suggests there's this parallel there between her struggles and the broader tragedy. And through that, she finds resilience, a way to move forward. It's like even in the darkest of places, there's hope, a way to overcome. I think that's something we can all find inspiration in.
It's a brilliant way to add depth to a character, you know? It's not just about the case, it's about their growth or evolution. And by having those internal and external struggles mirror each other, it kind of suggests that maybe to understand true darkness, you have to confront your own. Powerful stuff.
And we can't forget the setting itself, the woods. It's not just a backdrop. It's this symbolic force. On the one hand, it's beautiful, tranquil, but then it's also this hiding place, a silent witness to the violence. It's like nature itself is complicit in a way, adds another layer of, well, of creepiness, I guess you could say.
Nature's like that, isn't it? Double-edged sword. You've got the beauty, the serenity, but also the danger, the hidden things. It's the perfect setting for a story like this where innocence and brutality coexist.
Okay, so this book, it's clearly packing a lot in. Let's talk strengths. The review, it really gushes about the atmosphere, how chilling it is. Apparently, Richards, he's a master at using that natural setting, those woods, to build tension. It's like you feel this sense of dread, even though on the surface, it's just trees and quiet. Paints a pretty vivid and, frankly, unsettling picture.
You can't underestimate the power of a strong sense of place, especially in a thriller. It's all about creating that mood, that unease. And the woods, they're perfect for that. Isolated, full of shadows, the unknown lurking around every corner. It's like you're right there with the characters, feeling that fear.
Then there's Christine herself.
Mm-hmm.
The review praises how complex she is. She's not this perfect, invincible hero. She's smart, capable, but she's also got flaws, scars. It makes her relatable, like she's a real person dealing with real stuff, even as she's trying to solve this horrific case. Makes you root for her even more, I think.
It's always more interesting, right? A protagonist who's got some baggage, some struggles, makes them human. And with Christine, it's like you admire her even more because she's pushing through, trying to do good, even with all that weight on her shoulders. Adds a layer of, of depth that you don't always get in these kinds of stories.
The review also calls out the investigation itself. It's methodical, realistic, and I gotta say, I kind of like that in a thriller. I'm not always looking for explosions and car chases, Give me the details, the slow burn, the methodical uncovering of the truth. It's like you're right there in the lab with Christine, piecing it all together. For anyone out there who loves a good puzzle, this is probably right up your alley.
It's satisfying, isn't it? That sense of realism, of knowing that the author's done their homework, that the process feels authentic. It's like you're not just passively reading, you're actively engaged, trying to figure it out alongside the characters. Makes the payoff that much more rewarding.
And finally, the review talks about this fresh take on the whole serial killer narrative. It's not just about the gore, the shock value. It's about the psychology, the blend of science and mythology. It's like the killer's motivations, they're deeper, more disturbing than just, simple evil. For anyone out there looking for something more than just your average thriller, something that really gets under your skin, this might be it.
It's what sets a good thriller apart from the rest, It's not just about the thrills, the scares. It's about exploring the darkness, the things that make us uncomfortable. And by blending in those elements of mythology, psychology, it's like it takes it to a whole other level. You're not just reading a story, you're grappling with bigger questions, the deeper stuff that stays with you long after you finish the book.
Okay, so no book's perfect, right? The review, it does point out some potential downsides. One of them is the pacing. It's a slow burn, it says. So if you're the kind of reader who needs constant action, twists every other page, well, this might not be your cup of tea. It's more about the atmosphere, the buildup, the gradual unraveling of the mystery.
Pacing's subjective, what one person finds gripping, another might find tedious. It's all about finding what works for you as a reader. But yeah, if you're looking for something fast-paced, high-octane, this might not be it. This is more about savoring the details, letting the tensions there.
Another thing to be aware of, the review mentions the content. It's dark. It's graphic. So fair warning, if you're squeamish, if you prefer your reading material a little lighter, this might not be the best choice. It's dealing with some pretty heavy stuff, and it doesn't shy away from the details.
It's important, to know what you're getting into, especially with a subject matter like this. It's not about glorifying the violence, but it's about being honest, about showing the true horror of what's happening. And for some readers, that might be too much. It's a personal choice.
And finally, the review points out that the focus is very much on the procedure, the investigation. It's not as action-heavy as some thrillers might be. So again, if you're looking for car chases, explosions, that kind of thing, this might not be the best fit. It's more about the intellectual pursuit, the piecing together of the clues, the journey through the forensic world.
It's a different kind of thrill, right? It's not about the adrenaline rush. It's about the satisfaction of solving the puzzle, of seeing how the pieces fit together. And for some readers, that's way more rewarding. It's like you're actively participating in the story, not just passively consuming it.
All right, so let's talk about impact, because this book, it's got quite a story. Originally, it came out, without a ton of fanfare. But then years later, it explodes in popularity. And you know what the catalyst was? Social media. The author's daughter, she shared something about it online, and it went viral. Talk about a testament to, to never giving up and to the unpredictable nature of everything, really.
It's a wild story, isn't it? It proves that sometimes all it takes is that one spark, that right moment, and a good book can find its audience no matter when it was published. The power of social media, you can't deny it. And it's heartwarming, too, that father-daughter connection. It's like it played a role in this whole thing.
The review also points out how the book blends genres. It's crime fiction, it's a thriller, there's even a touch of psychological horror in there. It's like it's got something for everyone, as long as you're not averse to a little darkness. For those of you who like a book that keeps you guessing, that jumps between genres, this one might be worth checking out.
It's smart, appealing to a wider audience. You've got the folks who love a good mystery, the folks who want those chills, the folks who are fascinated by the psychology of it all. It's like there's something for everyone to latch onto. It makes it more accessible, and ultimately, I think, more impactful.
And finally, the review kind of positions this book as a signal of something bigger. This return to more thoughtful, slow burn thrillers. It's like in a world of constant action and over-the-top plots, there's this craving for something more grounded, more character-driven. It's about the journey, not just the destination. For those of you who miss that kind of storytelling, this book, it might be a sign that, it's coming back.
It's refreshing, isn't it, to see that trend emerging. It's like there's this space opening up for stories that take their time, that really delve into the characters, the motivations, the psychology. It's not about just keeping you on the edge of your seat. It's about making you think, making you feel. And that's powerful stuff.
Oh, and before we forget, the review, it actually gives some recommendations for similar books.
Sure.
If you're into Stone Maidens, you might also dig these. You got the classic, The Silence of the Lambs, which, duh. It's all about the psychology, the slow burn, the chills. Then there's Stillhouse Lake, Blindsided, The Bone Collector, another great one for the forensic science fans out there. And then In the Woods, which from what I hear is a bit more literary, a bit more atmospheric. But they all share that DNA, the focus on character, the unsettling vibes, the slow unraveling of the truth. So, if any of those titles ring a bell, Stone Maidens might be worth adding to that PBR list.
It's like a curated reading list, tailored to your specific tastes. If you loved the intricate details of The Bone Collector or the creepy atmosphere of In the Woods, chances are Stone Maidens will hit those same buttons. It's a great starting point for further exploration.
So wrapping it all up, Stone Maidens, it sounds like it's got a lot going for it. You've got a protagonist you can really get behind, a fascinating and realistic investigation, and an atmosphere that'll keep you looking over your shoulder, even in broad daylight. Plus, that whole backstory of how it became a bestseller, it's inspiring, Shows that sometimes the good stuff, it just takes a little longer to find its way into the spotlight. For anyone out there who loves a good psychological thriller, the kind that stays with you long after you turn the last page, this one, it might be right up your alley.
It's a book that promises to deliver on multiple levels. You get the thrills, the chills, but you also get the depth, the character development, the exploration of those darker themes. It's not just entertainment, it's an experience.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. We've talked a lot about how Stone Maidens blends the world of forensics, the hard science, with mythology, psychology, all that stuff that's harder to quantify. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? As we try to understand crime, the why behind it all, the darkness that drives some people, are we doing ourselves a disservice by keeping those worlds separate? I mean, maybe the answers, they lie somewhere in the intersection, where logic and myth collide. Something to ponder, right? Anyway, thanks for diving in with us. Until next time, happy reading.